Right.
Blue line is moving across. See when it says live, we're good to go. Yay, we're live. What's up, Brian?
And
Virtual hug.
I
Virtual
know,
hug.
I want to give you a real one. I miss you.
Okay, so introduce yourself. This is Brian Dubow, and tell us where you're from, how, just the basics at first.
Yeah, so hi everyone. I am Brian Dubow. I'm originally from Miami. Prior to COVID, I was living in New York City, but that brought me back to Miami where I found Erin and Full Circle Coaching, and I trained with her for about 6 months towards the Lake Placid Ironman.
Yeah, okay, we're gonna go way back. We're gonna go back from the very first phone call when you called me up. So what inspired you to sign up? Because you signed up before we even spoke, right? So you signed up for the Ironman, and what inspired you to do that?
Yes. So I've done a few marathons, and prior to COVID, my goal was to do the big six marathons in 6 years.
Okay.
And I was signed up for the Berlin Marathon in 2020. That got canceled. And I'm a very goal oriented person. So I needed a next thing. And one of my friends called me up and said, "You ever thought about an Ironman?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I've thought about it, but that's crazy. That's something you do like later in your life, right?" And it was like, what if we just signed up and did it?
And how old
And
are you? How old are you?
I'm 27 years old.
Okay.
So I thought about it for no more than 6 minutes, and I said, "Let's do it." So the next day, I think the Lake Placid Ironman was opening up for registration. We both signed up, not knowing what it would entail. I did not own a bike at the time. I had very little swimming experience, and I said, "I'm going to figure this out, and I'm going to become an Ironman." And that was the beginning of my journey.
Yeah,
I probably should think these things through more, but we made it. So
yeah, honestly, you had a great result, so I don't think you should have done it any other way. And the fact that you had to go full in because you made the commitment with no prior experience. But let's go back to the real experience. So you were a runner, and your typical marathon time was a little bit under 4 hours, right?
right.
Okay, so you had some good fitness there. But the Ironman was something new. Swimming and biking were new. So you ended up getting a bike, right? And this is before me, right? So what happened when you started to try to train on your own? Like what made you decide to give me a call?
Right. So I got my first bike, and it was a clip-in bike, and I spent the first week just tipping over left and right as I tried to clip in and clip out, and that did not go well. Finally, I got the clipping in down, and then about 2 weeks later, I actually took a pretty bad spill when I was biking on Key Biscayne, and that really put me on the sidelines for probably 3 weeks. I had scrapes up and down the left side of my body, and my bike was a little banged up, which you don't want to see when your bike is 3 weeks old.
And how much money? Yeah.
Exactly. So I decided that I really have no idea what I'm doing. I would rather put my life and my race in the hands of someone who does know what they're doing. So I started asking around for a coach or a mentor in this space, and through a few different connections that brought me to Erin, and we had our initial discussion about what it would look like to work together for the following 6 months to get to Lake Placid.
Exactly. Okay, so I got the phone call and we started talking, and you're like, I already signed up, and I'm like, 6 months. For me, I like to work with an athlete 2 years to get you to an Ironman, right? But I happen to have just finished my triathlon transformation program, which is a 6 month program, right? And I'm like, well, I have one other person in that program, and I'm going to put Brian in that program, and I'm going to really, pull out all the bells and whistles and make sure that he has every single thing he needs to cross the finish line and be successful at the race. So, just talk, we decided to work together. We made the commitment, right? So just talk about that early, that first 6 weeks, because it can be a little bit overwhelming. Would you say that there was just so many details to all the different things I was teaching you? like running, even your running, we worked on. Just because you're a runner doesn't mean that you're going to be a good runner on Ironman, because you have to do it after the swim and the bike, right? So we didn't leave anything untouched. We worked on nutrition, we worked on flexibility, we worked on strength, we worked on swim skill, bike skill, run skill. And even though you were a runner, we still improved your running form and your efficiency, right? So talk to everybody just a little bit about that process, because the first 6 weeks is pretty intense, because we did all the evaluations and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. To put it in one word, I would say the first 6 weeks were just unbelievably humbling. Where, I went into this, I was like, oh, I'm an athlete. I've done some marathons, but, this is just upskilling a little bit to a triathlon. And I was just constantly I felt like I had my back against the wall and I couldn't do enough. I was constantly on this uphill battle to really come to terms with the fact that, I don't know how to swim. I don't know how to bike. I'm surrounded by people who do, and of all ages, of all different backgrounds. I really need to upskill. So in the beginning, and your training program is 5-6 days a week. You're meeting together as a team 5 days a week. So I definitely had to reprioritize my life. At the time, I was trying to, balance every dimension of life. And I would say that I really had to make that commitment that I am going to prioritize this Ironman and this lifestyle over everything else, even if it means, sacrificing my social life a little bit, sacrificing various other aspects of life, my diet, changing my diet. I said, I'm leaning all the way into this. I've committed to this Ironman, and now I'm being held accountable by Aaron as well as the rest of this team. There's no turning back. Whatever it takes, we're going to get there. And yeah, sometimes this meant that I was biking alone in a parking lot just so I could practice my turning, and, swimming slower than the rest of the team. But it was also very, it creates this cycle where you want to keep on coming back, because in the beginning you see progress happening very quickly, and it's making those 1 or 2% gains every single day that makes you more confident the following practice. And the first time you do that 20-mile bike ride, it's like, oh, I can do this. Can I do 30? Can I do 40? So it gets exciting to push your limits and see what you're capable of. And I'd say by the end of 6 weeks, I was just far more comfortable in my own skin, in my own abilities. I definitely broken myself down and accepted, okay, I'm not good at this, but I can get there, and it's about putting in the work. And I'd say 6 weeks in, I did see that path forward. I did see that this is possible, but I need to work really, really hard for the next few months.
Right. So coming from a zero background in the swim and the bike specifically, those were the things we really worked on the most as far as your skill. Like literally, I have your very first video across the pool. And it's not pretty, right? And you were just wasting a lot of energy. And if you had attempted to do the Ironman with that, you might not have made the cutoff, honestly. You probably willingly would have finished, right? But your form was not there. The same thing on the bike. There was a lot of apprehension because you had that accident. And so we couldn't have you riding the group for a few weeks. So you had to put in your due diligence on the bike and make the bike a part of you as far as your bike handling skills and all the drills that we gave you, right? But it worked, right? But it does, there is a learning curve. Everybody comes in at a different place, but eventually you were able to meld in with the team. And the cool thing that you've said many times is how much the team was a part of your journey. So can you explain that a little bit more? Because it's not just that they were better than you, because there were some people that were actually worse than you or not as leveled or skilled level. I don't like to say worse or better, but they had more opportunities for improvement, right, than you. But, coming in and having all these different levels, how does that inspire you to keep going? Like, can you talk to that about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I cannot say enough about having the team there to support me, to coach me, to inspire me. Everyone comes from, yes, a different level of athleticism, but there's people of all ages who have done Ironman or done different types of races and have had these experiences and have been that beginner that I was. So I felt so grateful to have people who were encouraging me to keep pushing forward after a tough day of training or after I felt defeated, after a day in the pool. So that was just amazing to have that support. Then the accountability, being with you all in Miami, it's definitely most 27-year-olds are not waking up at 5:30 a.m. to go meet with people on the beach or meet with people at the track. And knowing that this team was going to be there and someone would say, "Oh, where were you yesterday? Cutting out early or something?" That definitely helped me really become more accountable for myself in terms of showing up and putting in that work day after day after day. And then just the quality of the people also. I just think everyone really wants to lift each other up and help each other out. And we all understand that we have these goals. Maybe for some people it's a sprint triathlon, some people it's an Ironman, but wherever we are, we all have these goals that we're working towards, and whatever we can do to support each other, we will do. And this came to fruition so many times throughout my training. For example, my super day, where that is the day where I try to get as close to the race as possible. So I'd say we did about 3/4 of an Ironman on that day. And I had people from the team joining me on various parts of the legs of the race. So they didn't have to do that. That was not a part of their training plan, but they wanted to support me in my mission. And that made me want to support everyone else however I could. If that meant, showing up at a race that I wasn't participating in, just to congratulate my teammates, my friends. It's an amazing community.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so we all cared so much about you. You were such an honor, a joy, a light in our group. You have so much great energy. And so speaking of that super day, so I have a super day usually for my Ironman and half Ironman athletes, and it's just kind of a trial day where you're not doing the full distance, of course, but you're kind of feeling it out, and it really is a confidence booster to finish that day, because then you're 100% confident that you're going to make it through the race. So that's what that day is about. But let's go back a little bit earlier to Tri-Camp. So Ultimate Tri-Camp, that was a huge pivotal turning point for you. And normally on a journey to Ironman, I would have an athlete do 2 to 3 sprints, 2 to 3 Olympic distance races, 2 half Ironmans, and a full Ironman. But we did not have time. We did not have time for any of that, right? And scheduling wise, you still kept, how many weddings did you go to during training? You still kept a social calendar. So we had to adjust. We adjusted your training around your weddings and the bachelor parties and all that stuff. So there were races missed, like we couldn't get to any. So you did come to training camp, and talk about that experience a little bit, because I know you up-leveled, like I would say 75%. You came out of training camp like so much stronger and more confident.
Absolutely. I thought training camp was huge. First of all, being on the hills was a new experience for me. I had really only trained in Miami, and the biggest hill I had experienced was Key Biscayne Bridge, which is a significant hill, but it lasts about 2 minutes versus we were climbing some major hills here. So on the bike, I gained infinite experience, just feeling comfortable, especially with a race like Lake Placid that is extremely hilly, feeling comfortable that I can handle different types of terrain. And then just getting the reps. I believe Tri-Camp is 5 days or so. Spending all day training, as opposed to just that 1 hour, 2 hours in the morning before you really get to your day. By focusing all my energy on strictly improving, it made me far more mindful of what I needed to work on, and then I could practice fixing that later in the day or the next day at practice. So I just became far more cognizant of what I needed to improve on, what my weakest links were, and put that into action immediately, as opposed to letting it fade to the side. Right. And then another piece of Tri-Camp is just all the presentations where you learn about nutrition, you learn about diet, you learn just the ways other people race. That education was something that I did not have at all, especially coming from a running background, but I didn't even take it that seriously in terms of nutrition, in terms of supplements. So that education was huge and really led to me modifying the way I the way I dieted, the supplements I took, and everything else.
Right. Yeah. And you actually were one of our presentations, which was an amazing addition. So Brian is the owner of Hit of Happiness. He's a blog, and he actually presented on what was the topic? It was just happiness, right? It was like how to include happiness in your life, right?
Exactly.
And I'm hoping you're coming back via Zoom for Ultimate Tri Camp 2022. Is that true?
I will be back. So make sure you are at Tri Camp next year, everyone.
Yeah, it's a great presentation. Took lots of notes and actually implement a lot of the things that you talked about being appreciative. So, okay, so let's move on from Tri Camp, because then you did Haines City 70.3. And that was another huge moment because we had never raced before. Like, I don't like to have an athlete show up and do their very first race as a half Ironman, right? So and to me, you're putting a lot of eggs in one basket, right? But I was confident after Tri Camp that you were going to be dialed in, and you did not disappoint. You had an amazing day. We followed you, the whole time. I wasn't able to be there. I had some other athletes that were there. But I would say, like, you pretty much, dialed everything in and hit everything exactly the way you wanted to. Was that true?
Yes. And I have to give you so much credit for your process and just building out, a race day plan and sticking to that plan. Because again, I didn't know anything about how many calories I should be eating going into a race or what I should have in these transition bags. What even is transition? I remember someone was talking about T1 and I said, what's that? So I think that just that education was so helpful, and having your experience of this is the best way to do things and what you should be consuming during the race, things like that. And I just stuck to the plan. I literally just did what we agreed upon, and things could not have gone better on that race day. And for me, my goal was really to finish, given that that was my first triathlon. Right. But I also was just so proud to finish in stride. I still had my run at the end of the 13 miles. So that just felt good. And that was a big moment in the Ironman journey where I could actually tell the hard work was paying off. And that gave me additional motivation to keep going as I kicked off the next 3-month block before the full Ironman.
Exactly. Yeah. And I will never forget the look on your face and your picture across the finish line for Haines City, because I was like, oh, he's so golden. So my goal with every person who finishes their first half Ironman is to think to themselves, okay, I could keep going if I had to. And when you cross the finish line with that much exuberance and excitement and energy, it's just a question of training more, because it's all up here that you were able to do it. So you dialed that race in so well. And then we really didn't have any other races until the big day, right? Till Ironman itself. And so just talk about that whole experience, because we actually really haven't had a chance to catch up on it. And I want you to speak to it as like, I really appreciate how you told me when you were finished with the race, like, I enjoyed every minute of that thing. I literally looked around and I was absorbing the beauty, the process of everything that I was doing. And I think that so many athletes miss that, right? And they're in there for the time and, oh my God, I have to have a certain time. And I know you didn't have a time goal, but we wanted you to finish strong, right? And feeling good. That was really the whole goal. And you had an amazing day. So talk about the actual Ironman itself, Ironman Lake Placid.
Sure. So someone once told me this. I think going into my first marathon, I was, at this point, I had never done anything more than a half marathon. And I was at the expo, and I'm sure I looked jittery and nervous. And someone who had done tons of them said, don't worry, you've already done the race. This is your celebration. And that has stuck with me ever since my first marathon. So as I go into training for any race, I like to think of it as the journey is the destination. And my 6 months with Full Circle Coaching, that was the race. That was, being able to show up, having those laughs, those cries, those whatever it is with the team. That was the race, and just being able to commit to myself and continue to show up, and the growth that came with it, and the stretching mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. So given that all I had been through and all I had put into this, and I truly believe that what you put in is what you get out. I could have trained, skipped more days. I could have trained in a different manner, but I wanted to get as much out of this process as possible. Given all that I put into it over those 6 months, I knew on race day, all I could do is my best. There's nothing I can control anymore. So I might as well have fun. I might as well make the most of this day, make the most of this weekend, take it all in. This is it. I don't know if I'll ever do another Ironman. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But because I don't know that right now, I need to make this the best day of my life. So bring that to race day. And I just tried to have a smile on my face all day and a good attitude, and just constantly remind myself that no matter, first of all, getting to that finish line was a non-negotiable. I had made that agreement with myself. Nothing was going to stop me from getting to that finish line. No matter if I made it to the pain cave, whatever you want to call it, I had decided, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep on moving our legs. And I had the confidence, thanks to the training and my physical abilities, to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of just had the mentality throughout, during the swim, rather than allowing myself to stress out about it. I kind of thought of that about the swim as the warm up. This is us just getting our body loose. Let's get comfortable in this race. Let's get into our body and let's arrive. So given that, I found a nice meditative flow. Of course, not everything goes as planned. There was a point where my legs were cramping up and I was like, I guess I'm not using my legs the rest of the day. We'll see how this goes. But, again, you got to reel yourself back into the moment and just keep swimming. So for the swim, it felt very quick. It felt like that was, and I think it was about an hour 20 for me, which is much faster than my pace for my half Ironman. So that just shows that sticking to Aaron's program, results will come. But the swim was just a wake up. It was getting comfortable. It was arriving in the race. Then was the bike, which is still the thing that gives me the most anxiety, even though my crash was 7-8 months ago now. So I knew that I knew that even before I got onto the bike, my mindset was that if I got off that bike, I was an Ironman. I just needed to make it through that bike, because then I would have 6+ hours to do the marathon. And as long as I could walk the marathon, hopefully, and finish it. So I just needed to get off that bike.
Yeah.
And for that, I just tried to keep a good mentality about it, stick to our plan. It was very important to me not to blow up at any point, especially on these hills. So Aaron and I had talked about, keep your heart rate below a certain level. So that's really the main thing I was focused on throughout the race, and also just safety. Just to give a little background on the course, Lake Placid is extremely hilly, and it kicks off with something called Keene Descent. And this is about 6 consecutive miles downhill, where some racers were going over 50 miles per hour on this hill. I definitely hit my personal high of 43 miles per hour. Wow. Before this, I don't think I'd ever gone more than 32, 33 miles per hour on a bike. And at one point I passed a speed sign that said 35 miles per hour while I was going 43. And I was like, this can't be safe. But so for me, it was kind of just like using my body to slow myself down and just stay calm, just stay in the race. We just need to make it through this bike ride. Right. And it was a journey. I definitely made some friends along the way. I took on the strategy of anytime I had a long uphill, I would just pull up next to someone and strike up a conversation. That way, instead of thinking about when is this hill going to end, it's more of, this is an interesting person. Maybe we'll be friends one day,
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome.
So I tried to have fun. Whenever there was a crowd, I would egg them on. I would, try to get the energy from the crowd. So I made it off the bike. The second loop was brutal, to be honest. The last 11 miles are straight uphill, and it was also into the wind. And I had also been on my bike for 6.5 hours already. And I was looking to the right, and you see tons of people with their just off their bike with their head in their hands.
Quitting,
and
right? They're like done, right?
they're done. They're done. They're tapped
Yeah.
out. And you see that, and it's like, okay, I don't want to be that person.
Right.
I am getting off this bike. I'm getting back to the transition area.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would say for me, the toughest part of the entire race was the last 10 miles of the bike, where I was sick of sitting in that saddle. I didn't want to be in that saddle anymore. And it was just an uphill battle where I was exerting as much as I could while still staying within my heart rate threshold and maybe going 7 miles per hour. And it felt like I might as well be moving backwards. But at the end of the day, I knew just keep on powering through, keep the legs moving. Once we're off this bike, we are an Ironman, and again, it's hard to think like that and think that this is a celebration when you really are struggling, when you really are, at that point where suffering. But the fact that it was time boxed, the fact that I was in my last few miles, it was just like, just keep going, just keep powering through. And once I got back into town, it really started hitting me. I got excited, and
I have to mention, how many peanut butter and jelly sandwiches did you have on the bike?
So I am a big peanut butter and jelly sandwich fan. That is my nutrition of choice in a race. I had packed 8 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Wow.
I only got through maybe 5 to 5.5. I was very concerned about my nutrition, and within the first 40 miles, I had already eaten 3 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And I was full. I didn't even think about that possibility that I'd be full on a bike in the middle of an Ironman, because I was like, oh, I'll burn 10,000 calories that day. But so then I had to slow it down, and I switched my nutrition to go macro bars and more goos and gels. But I made it through as many as I could, knowing that the more calories I could consume, the better I would feel throughout the day. I didn't want to bonk. That was a priority for me as well.
But it's an inside joke in our group, because I'm into the liquid calories and the gels and the goos and macro bars, and Brian's like, nope, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. That's what I'm doing. I'm like, great, if it works for you, that's all I care about, right?
It worked. It definitely worked.
Okay, so then let's talk about the run, because it is challenging even at coming into the race, getting off the bike. Usually that first mile, you're like, OMG, I have to run 26 miles right now, right? And so how did you break that out in your head? Like, we talked about it, but I want to hear from your specific. I haven't heard, right? We haven't talked since the race. So I'm excited to hear like how the journey went on the run, even though that's your specialty. Like, how did you break it down?
So at this point, I had just spent close to 8 hours on my bike. And, at that point, I was really able to say, I'm not breaking any world records here or hitting any of those time thresholds. So it's not worth, stressing on this run over hitting a particular time goal. It's really just have fun, take it all in. This is the bookend of this past 6 months of my life. Let's do this. So as I was lacing up my shoes, I was excited. I was excited to finish this day and finish strong. And my family was there. So right as I started running, I was giving them high fives, and they were like, "You got this." That definitely felt pretty good.
Yeah.
And then in terms of breaking it up, I'd say the main way to break it up for me was conversations with people. And it's something you don't think about going into the race, but I just met so many people and had so many great conversations that took my mind out of whatever pain I was going through, or the fact that I had been out there for 12 hours already. Instead of that, I was talking to people about their dogs, or about, the time they qualified for the Boston Marathon, or, such silly things. So I would say that helped me a lot. I would say,
it's been a few weeks, so it's not as fresh in your mind, but
I think I definitely tried to, going into this race, I thought that I was going to be very in my head throughout the race. I thought I should come into this race with a problem I want to solve, because if I'm going to spend 14 plus hours with myself, I'm going to figure out the meaning of life and solve the Da Vinci Code or something. I was pretty surprised by how present I was, how I did very little thinking and more just being. And especially by the time I was off my bike, I was just fully in the moment and appreciating the energy of the event, the beautiful scenery around me. So I didn't figure out the meaning of life, I don't think, but I did just have a wonderful day. And one thing I did is I had my name, Brian, taped onto my shirt for the run.
In tape, right?
In tape, exactly.
Yes.
So every single spectator who I ran by said, "Go Brian." And that was huge. Every time I heard my name, that was a burst of energy. Yeah. And that brought me back into the moment. So no matter if, my knees acting up, it's like, oh, I need to smile at that person. That's more important than this. I was like a dog with a squirrel to the side of me. So that really helped me play into the crowd a bit. And then I would say I also knew other people in the race, and this race is a lot of back and forth. Right. So one of my best friends was racing, as well as a few other people I knew. And I was giving, I would run past one of them every 2-3 miles, and we'd give each other a hug or a pep talk or something like that. So that also just, keep it going. You're doing great. You look great.
Yeah.
I think it's just such a mentality where if you stay in the right headspace and are feeding off of that positive energy, the thought of stopping does not cross your mind.
Yeah. And so I just want to highlight that, this was after probably one of the worst years in most people's lives, right? And the fact that you chose to do an Ironman during this time in your life, when you were at a complete pause, you didn't know what to do with yourself, literally. And so you chose to do this. How good was it when you finally crossed that finish line? And like you said, the culmination of these 6 months of training, can you describe that feeling? Because for me, that's my favorite feeling in the world, is crossing the finish line in a triathlon. That's why I've done so many of them. Yeah. So for your second race ever being a full Ironman, after this crazy past 2 years, just describe that feeling for someone who says, I can't do an Ironman. That's just not possible for me. It's too hard. I wouldn't know how to do it, whatever. Speak to that person right now. When you cross that finish line, you know what I mean? How do you feel?
Yeah. I mean, the answer is you feel limitless. You feel like anything is possible, which I know is the slogan of Ironman, but it's true. I definitely started getting a little emotional the last mile or so, and I picked up my speed for the last mile. I started getting excited. I started reflecting on everything that I had gone through, and all the sacrifices I had made to get to this very moment. And crossing that finish line and hearing them say, "Brian Dubow, you are an Ironman," after this has just been a fictitious thing in my head for so long, was a surreal feeling. I could not believe that moment had arrived in my life. And I was just there's a lot of gratitude pouring out of me. I'm grateful for all the people who helped to make this happen. I'm grateful for myself for putting in all the work. I'm grateful for you, Aaron. I'm grateful for these events, for these tests in life. And it really makes you realize that anything is possible. And it's just a matter of how badly do you want it and how hard are you willing to work? And that's really one of the things that has stayed with me beyond the Ironman, where, maybe I don't know exactly what my next goal is. Maybe it's something more intellectual. Maybe it's something, in a completely different realm of my life. But I feel like I've worked past those limits in my head that tell me, you can't do that. That's not who you are. You're not an artist. You're not a whatever. We all have those things that we've built up in our heads based off of the way we grew up. And it could be a conversation we had when we were 8 years old that stuck with us our entire lives.
Yeah.
doing something that most humans think is physically impossible really rewires that and reframes what is possible in your head. And that's something that is applicable to everything in life. And then it's just a matter of understanding what it took to get there. And for me, that was waking up early for 6 months and putting in the work. And that now makes me wonder, what is that next thing that I want to work that hard towards? Because I know that with the right amount of effort and with the right amount of commitment and dedication and accountability and coaching, I can get there. Which is crazy.
Yeah, go ahead. You answered my next question was how does this change your perspective on life? Because you already answered it, but that's what it is for me too. Every time I'm doubting myself or one of my athletes is not having the best day in life, when they go and they show up and they just complete that workout, just show up, right? And they're doing what is necessary. Just, even if it's the bare minimum that particular day, but in your case, crossing the line and the finish line of an Ironman, there's nothing you can't do. Right? You are unstoppable, right? And so what was your mantra? Did you have any mantras during the race? I always like to ask that.
Yes. So my mantra that I really held on to the entire training process and especially on the race day was, I am present, I am motivated, I am limitless. So I already had, that limitless mentality when I needed it to pull on when I was feeling low. But I'd say the mantra was huge, constantly bringing myself back to, I'm present, I am here, I am now, I am motivated. No matter what I'm feeling right now, I am motivated to get to that finish line, and whatever that finish line is in your life, it could be school, it could be anything, it could be your job, it could be a deadline. Right. Are you motivated to get there? You can be. That's a mentality. Then I am limitless. Right. Is your goal even tough enough for you? Push harder, find something greater. Because, if the goal isn't scaring you, you might want to push it out even farther.
Yeah. So you picked a big, hairy goal, right? That's like totally out of your mind. You did it. And now you know and believe in yourself that it's possible for doing anything else. And you have moved on. Like, I'm very sad because Brian actually left us. So yeah, I don't like it when my athletes move on, but we're still in communication. We're going to be working together with Hit of Happiness, which is his blog. But tell us where you are now and what your next journey is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've moved to Los Angeles, and I actually moved about 4 days after my race. So life was happening very quickly. Yeah. I am getting my MBA at UCLA, Anderson School of Management. So I guess I've taken that physical journey and now I'm trying to translate it into a more intellectual journey where I'm trying to build out Hit of Happiness a little bit, turn that into more of a lifestyle brand. B, just expand my mind in the way I approach the world, approach conversations, become a better listener, a better critical thinker. And C, just take on a new journey. And, just being in a new city adds new dimensions. I'm meeting so many new people from different walks of life. So if any of you are in LA, I'd love to go for a run with you. I'd love to talk about the Ironman. If you need some inspiration, I am here for you.
Yeah, well, so Brian, I just want to thank you so much and congratulations because you are a huge part of our group and our tribe, and we all miss you dearly. So we're not going to say goodbye, right? We're going to say see you soon. Is there anything else you want to share? So the program that you were in was called Triathlon Transformation. Now, could you speak to anything about like what transformed? I mean, you already said a lot of transformation, but is there anything else that kind of sticks out from the program itself? Because it is very comprehensive. You learned a lot in a very short period of time, right? And that's the reason why I feel like the program works so well, is because it's a system, right? And you plugged into the system and the results speak for themselves, right? But from your perspective, is there anything like along the lines of the transformation piece that you could add?
Yes. So I'm not the same person I was before this process. There's no question in my mind. I definitely, for better or for worse, I'm addicted to exercise, which I love. a morning person. I remember my first week in the program where we had, early wake ups. I really was second guessing, what am I doing? Is it like, well, I don't want to get out of bed right now. And now, my body is pulling me out of bed before my mind can even think about it to get my morning workout in or my whatever else I have to do.
That's awesome. I love that.
I would say my work ethic has improved, not just in exercise, but in everything else, because I now see that hard work pays off. So, and I think it's so in your face during this process where you see the improvements happening every single week. And you see that, your heart isn't working as hard when you're running the same pace you were 2 weeks ago. That's awesome. I want to get even better. So the results are really in your face. And that really provides the added confidence that the hard work is really working. So keep on doing it and the results will come. So as I really think about whatever my next challenges that I want to take on, and eventually I will get back in the endurance sports world. I don't know if it's an Ironman. I don't know if it's an ultra marathon. I don't know what it looks like, but I want to continue my pursuit to this like self-actualization and see what my limits are. It's really interesting just because I thought that I would really, really hit that limit in the Ironman. And maybe I didn't think that after Aaron's entire process, but before you even think about an Ironman, when I first signed up, I was like, this is going to be the worst day of my life, I was just like, I'm going to do this thing, but I have to believe it's going to be miserable exercising for 14 plus hours in a day. And as you heard, it was such a fun day. Yeah. So, that reframing of with the right level of preparation, anything can not just be accomplished, but also be enjoyable. And I think that applies to, giving a speech, giving, really anything. The power of preparation. So as I really pursue that next thing, it's just a matter of putting in the right level of preparation and surrounding myself with the right people, such as Aaron and Full Circle Coaching, who I could not have been more prepared. And I am so grateful for everything I got out of this process. I just feel that I'm ready for whatever comes my way as I continue my life. And thank you.
You're welcome. I am so proud of you. Like, just so proud. I got goosebumps many times from what you just said. And you're so eloquent in your speech. And that reminds me, so please read Brian's blog about the race. So if you go to Hit of Happiness, he has a really long blog. It has all the details in there if you want to learn more. But thank you so much, Brian. We do miss you. We can't wait to see you again. So come and visit. Does your family still live here?
My family is still in Miami, so okay. I will do some guest appearances at practices. And
all right, and we have virtual stuff too, and we're going to be doing a blog together on Hit of Happiness, right? Or an interview.
Yes, Aaron will be on the Hit of Happiness podcast later in the year, so we'll learn all about what makes Aaron happy.
Yay, I love that. I'm so excited. Okay, well, we miss you dearly. Have an amazing weekend and good luck at school, and I'm wishing you well.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you to everyone for watching. Have a great day.